To the AM studios in Canberra, where Malcolm Turnbull is being interviewed.
Urges that bits of the broadband network be sold off to lower the financial risk to taxpayers. But doing that is so politically fraught, the government rejected the idea at the same time it released the report last night. So where do we go from here? Malcolm Turnbull is the Communications Minister. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
Just to put this in some kind of perspective, how much is the NBN costing a week now?
We're spending about $100 million a week.
$165 a second.
Your maths, I'll defer to your mathematics. Can I just make a point, though? The committee or the panel, the Vetrigan panel, recommending that the component parts of the NBN, you know, the satellite and the wireless, the fibre to the premises, fibre to the node, and then the HFC parts of the network be broken up. Is a very understandable argument. It's an argument for infrastructure competition, for facilities-based competition. The reason we have rejected it is because, frankly, this project has been in such a mess. It is such a big job getting it sorted out, getting the ship righted, getting it back on course. We've got to get the thing built. And Bill Morrow, the new CEO, and his team are doing that. And I don't want them to be distracted from the task of getting the project completed. Now, down the track, then, after it's built, after 2020, there may be, it'll be up to the government of the day, whoever that will be, to work out whether they want to break it up into different units.
So now it's not the time, but a time might come.
Well, it may, Chris. I mean, you've always got to have that optionality. I mean, I think it's important to consider these things. But right at the moment, my sole focus is recognising that I wish I wasn't starting from here. My sole focus is getting this project built as quickly and as cost effectively as possible.
But this report does find that there is a widespread national benefit from having a broadband network. The question is how much of that benefit you get from the models that you have.
Yeah, well, that's true. And the one thing that we know is that from the panel's work is that the benefit to the public is 9 times as high from the approach we're taking than from the approach Labor was taking. I mean, the panel's cost-benefit analysis was absolutely scathing about Labor's all-fibre approach, which, of course, remember, let's be honest, it was cooked up in 11 weeks, between the end of January and I think the early April 2009. So, Labor committed the government and the taxpayer to this gigantic project with virtually no analysis and homework in a disgracefully short time, and left us with this mess that we are now trying to sort out. And as I've said many times, there are tens of billions of dollars wasted that I can never recover. All I can do is mitigate the disaster.
Certainly, but in trying to mitigate that, you're being told that you should take an approach which sees this company split up and then go into competition, essentially, with the different constituent parts, is the best way to proceed, and you're rejecting that out of hand.
But rejecting it out of hand. I'm saying that is not something that we will do at this time. I think the project clearly has to be completed. I mean, what the panel has said has got a lot of merit from a theoretical point of view, but at a practical level, I've got to get the thing done. My job is to get it built, and it is a big enough challenge doing it at the moment to distract the management in terms of creating separate companies. We don't need that. We need to get it built, and then there's the option, Chris, in the future for restructuring down the track. But let's get the thing up and running and working first.
It also recommends that you should recover costs in new housing developments. Will you do that?
Well, we're certainly not proposing to recover the full cost recovery, which is what they canvass. Let me explain, though, why they do this. We're talking to the industry about recovering some costs and levelling the playing field with the private sector. What you had before the NBN was a private sector fibre deployment industry where people were rolling out fibre in new estates, and probably many of your listeners are in estates developments where that has occurred. The NBN came along under Labor and they said, right, we are going to do fibre in any greenfield state over 100 lots for free. And that obviously completely smashed the private sector fibre deployment companies. So it was extraordinary action for a government to do. And what Vetrigan has said, the Vetrigan panel has said, is this is outrageous. You've got to somehow level the playing field again. Well, one way of doing that is for NBN to recover all its costs. We've got to balance the
developers would pass those costs on to consumers.
Well, they'd onto home buyers. Yeah.
So people who bought properties earlier would get a benefit, and people who have them now won't.
I might say, and again, we're not proposing to go down the full cost recovery mode, but we're looking at other ways in which, without recovering the full cost, we can level the playing field. But if I can just say this, though, in the scheme of things, in the context of a house and land package, the cost of fibre is not a gigantic. It's not a big percentage,
but it is more.
And in fact, well, of course it is. But I just say this to you: it's quite interesting that the NBN Co's performance to date has been so disappointing that, contrary to expectations, the private sector fibre deployment companies were able to continue, even though people were prepared to pay them because they delivered better service than the NBN was doing for free.
Okay,
So there's a lesson for the NBN. It may be that if the NBN recovered some of its costs and acted in a more commercial, dynamic, responsive way, you'd get a better outcome for everybody, developers and the various fibre companies.
One last thing on this issue. Another recommendation is that you scrap this cross-subsidy for the bush. Will you do that?
Of course not. No, I mean, there's got to be there'd be no telecoms in the bush if there wasn't a cross-subsidy. They're not suggesting we scrap the cross-subsidy. What they're suggesting is that it be paid for out of the budget. Now, I think if Mr. Hockey would turn green if he had me suggest that. Again, I think that is a good point to make. It's very pure and it concentrates the mind. What I think does have some merit is another suggestion, which we're looking at, is that there should be a transparent levy on all broadband customers, so that it is people see
what the costs
how
are.
much of the money they're paying is actually being used to pay for the deployment in the bush.
Okay.
That wouldn't increase prices, by the way. It's just a question of being transparent.
When will the government announce the size of the funding caps to the ABC and the SBS?
Well, we are working with the two companies on that, and we're obviously having discussions internally with
a date?
The central aid. No, I can't give you a date. They're a cabinet. These are cabinet. Well, I say the ABC would say they're very big. Look, we are making cuts to the ABC and SBS budget. That is true. And we are, my focus has been ever since the election to ensure that the savings made by the ABC and SBS are focused on removing back office costs, excessive back office costs and waste, and are not simply, cancelling programs, cutting programs and reducing the resources available to programming.
Finally, briefly, the federal opposition leader Bill Shorten says Tony Abbott should have kept his personal views about the burqa to himself. Is that a fair call?
Oh no, I think Bill Shorten should settle down and stop trying to play politics with this. I think the Prime Minister's one of the Prime Minister's endearing qualities is that he is a very open. He has many endearing qualities, said his cabinet colleague. But one of his endearing qualities is he's very open, and I think that's I think what he said was fair enough. But I mean, the real thing is that unlike, say, France, where there is a ban in public places, in schools, for example, for wearing any item of clothing, whether it is a Jewish yarmulke or a burqa or a headscarf that indicates religion, and that's because of their secular culture. In Australia, we don't, we've got none of that, and no one's proposing that. But issues about face coverings and head coverings will be dealt with in particular locations on a security basis.
Malcolm Turnbull, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.